Welcome everybody to my very special show today here on Chess 24, Anna's Anatomy of the Attack. I was watching my own ad and I didn't realize I'm already live. So there's the delay from my side, watching my very own trailer, turning into a cyborg for this little short film for my brand new course. Many of you may have seen it already on my social media, on Chessable, on Chess 24, that the course came out this Monday. Or not, oh, I'm listening to myself. Happens to happens a lot, so I'm just gonna not listen in the earphones. But I was just saying that the course came out this Monday on my sister's birthday. It was a special tribute from my side. I wanted to contribute in some way to what I received from my family. So I chose this very specific day, the 27th of April. It's when my brand new course came out. And it's all about the attack, as you can see from the title, Anna's Anatomy of the Attack, and also Attack Like a Machine. So today, what we are going to do is channel our inner cyborgs and see what is it that I'm teaching in the course. I have chosen a game for you that I was very tempted to include in the course, but in the end, I changed my mind and I chose another game by Fallujah in the very same match against Jorge Corey that they played in Hogevens in the Netherlands. So this is a game that's not in the course material, but was close to being included, and you will soon see why it is a brilliant attacking game, and yet it didn't make it to the content. On that note, let me say hi to all of you tuning in from all sorts of different platforms. I'm checking the chat right now on Twitch and on Chess 24. I'll try to keep an eye on as many chats as possible because this is going to be an interactive lesson. I need you to turn your brain powers on to 120% right now because you're going to work through this game throughout the exercises. I need you to actually think, figure out the right plans, the right ideas, and that way I think we will learn a lot together. So this is not a passive watch show. You will need to work, work, and work. Are you ready to do that? Let me know in the chat. And also a brief note on the course, if you haven't figured it out from the title or the preview yet, it is once again about the attack. It's over 5 hours of video material, over 47,000 written words. I've never in my life written as much as this one. It's my first ever ebook, and there are over 108 exercises, 140 together with the informative exercises that you will need to work through in the course that you can find on Chessable. This is a blueprint of the attack. So my idea is that many of us, we are of course keen on attacking the opponent's king, but you cannot just decide that, okay, now I attack and then you give checkmate. You need to know how you build up the attack. So we're going to start in the course. It starts from the very first moment you take the initiative in a seemingly balanced position, and how you maintain that initiative, how you keep building up your attack, how you keep maximizing your potential with the activity of your pieces, how you provoke weaknesses, how you exploit those weaknesses, and how you manage to decrease the defense of your opponent, how you can chase away the defending pieces, how you can provoke them to further weaken their pawn structure in front of the king. All sorts of details are included in the course, and today we will be practicing some of these concepts on how to take the initiative and how to exploit the weaknesses in your opponent's camp in front of his king, because this is about same side castling attacks. So if you're ready, we're gonna start with this game between Jorge Corey and Alireza Firuza. We are playing with the black pieces, so you'll need to channel your inner Alireza. I hope you're ready. Today hasn't been the best day for Alireza, but he is obviously one of the brightest stars of the chess world right now. Still only 16 years old. It's incredible that at such a young age he can be this strong, that he even went on to beat Magnus in the finals of the Banter Blitz Cup. So I'm extremely impressed by Ali Reza. And in this game, he played the Budapest Gambit. I did not choose the game because I'm Hungarian and this is the Budapest Gambit, but I chose it for the middle game position that will arise soon. So we're gonna just simply walk through these opening moves. This is not our focus, but we will start talking about the game from this move on. What is that rook doing? Like, hello, rook on a6? Can someone tell me what are we doing? What is Alireza up to? And I do need your answers in the chat. I'm not gonna tell you straight away. I need you to work. What are we doing? Where is that rook going? I need to know. I need to know. Can someone tell me? I would love to. I would love to hear your thoughts. Yeah, the Armageddon by Nepo was brilliant. Definitely, Nepo deserved all the credit, but I do think that Ali Reza is capable of more than what he showed today. That's all I meant. The rook is going to g6 or h6, a rook lift. Yeah, many great answers in the chat. This is theory, methinks, potless power. Could be. I'm not the biggest expert of the Budapest Gambit. I've never played it in my life, but this is the idea indeed. So whether we know this structure and this variation of the opening, or we just simply think with our human brains, the rook is heading toward the king side. Rook to g6 or rook to h6 to attack the white king. White continued with queen d5, which is a very logical move, attacking the bishop. This queen is very strong in the center, and we don't have much to do with this bishop. We can either retreat it on this diagonal, but then it will not be helping our attack. If we place it on b6, c5 comes with a tempo, and the rook is hanging too, so we lose material. Therefore, the one square that is still all right to keep this bishop on the diagonal toward the king is on a7. And now you also see why it was so urgent for Alireza to place the rook on a6, so that when the bishop comes to a7, you are not blocking your rook on a8. Strange but very efficient maneuver. Now c5, I think, would have been quite a strong move for white. And I analyzed this position with Stockfish quite a bit, whether rook g6 or rook h6. I do think that c5 for white would have been the strongest, not just because it attacks the rook. The rook was already heading toward g6 or h6. So normally you do not want to push your opponent to carry out their plan. It's not about help chess. But the pawn on c5 does close the diagonal of the bishop from a7. So in this moment, white could continue with f4, and this pawn is not hanging thanks to this pawn. Remember this position when we will get to the actual game, because we'll need to compare this position to the game position. So f4, chase the knight away. There could be a trade on g4, knight to b5 to attack that bishop. Now the bishop has to come back to b8. It's quite a funky setup for black. Almost all the pieces on the back rank, and there's one rook on g4. Like, this is a very extraordinary position, I think, and it shouldn't be good for black. I must tell you, I don't think that black is doing here. It's against all the laws of chess that we know as the general rules on what makes a position good in chess. White's got all the space, all the center, the piece activity. So this has to be a great position for white. A move like queen f3 to step out of c6, attack the rook, d5 to do something active finally and get a bit of access in the center by defending the rook. The bishop is protecting the rook, but I do think that this position is better for white. May not be a decisive advantage, but it looks quite promising. I think slightly better, but definitely white doesn't have any problems here. So this could have happened in the game, but it didn't. After bishop a7, Jorge Cori, one of the top players of Peru, played knight e4 against Alireza, and Alireza from here on does go 4. The machine-like attack indeed, as you guys are saying in the chat. Rook h6, this is the first step. So we have carried out this rook lift, rook from a8 to a6 and now to h6. Therefore, our rook is already in the attack. The knight on e5 could be potentially helping our attack, and this bishop from a7 is also eyeing the king on g1. So those three pieces are now part of our attacking plan. The queen can join in by playing queen h4, and this rook is helpful protecting the knight on e5. it's attacked by the bishop and the queen. So we're gonna see what happens to the knight, but those pieces are useful, all of them basically, except for the bishop on c8, which is still on hold, waiting for its turn to shine. So this is the current position, and I'll need to, first of all, ask you what happens if white takes that hanging piece? Because hello, it's free stuff. Like that knight is not protected. What happens? What would have happened if Jorge Corey took on e5 with the bishop? Who will be the first to tell me in the chat what's the best way to continue here? How do we get that piece back? And I'm going to take a look at the chat, both on Twitch and Chess24. I wish I could take a look at every single platform too, but I don't have enough eyes. Like I have one eye on Twitch and the other on Chess24. So let me know. Let me know, what do you think would be the right continuation here? After bishop takes e5, we are a piece down, which is not ideal. Definitely not ideal. Let me see. Who's going to be the first to say? QVDV on Twitch saying c6. Absolutely. Very good job. Attacks the queen and at the same time protects the pawn. So there's no way the queen can stay on the 5th rank, cannot come to d6, cannot come to d4. Therefore, after c6, there's no way for the queen to hold on to the bishop. There's a strong move here for white. Instead of just moving the queen back to d3 to d2 and letting black capture on e5, this would be ideal for black, right? Now this rook 2 is active. The queen can come to h4, double attack, threatening mate on h2, threatening the knight on e4. It looks like a really dangerous position. But a better way for white to handle this is that, yeah, you need to give back the piece. But if the piece is lost, let's give it back on our terms. So now I need you to think for white. How do you think white should continue after c6? Benjamin, indeed, this is a free Anna Rudolf lesson. I'm showing a game that I was very tempted to include in the course, but in the end, I chose not to. I chose another game from this match between Fallujah and Corey in Hogevens. There's another game in the course, but not this one. I still think this is a brilliant attacking game, and that's why we are studying it today together. And I do need you to work. So what do we do with that hanging piece? It's going to be captured, but then let's give it back on our turns. Hacks06 on the Twitch chat, I see, saying bishop to f6. Very good job. And others also have mentioned that if you give back the piece with a tempo, especially on this square, so bishop c7, the difference between bishop to c7 and bishop to f6 is that here, when black takes on c7, it's still a very healthy position for black and the queen is hanging, so you gotta go. But bishop f6 means that you'll need to take with the pawn. You cannot take with the rook even though the queen is hanging, because knight takes f6 is a check. Careful, careful about that. So g takes f6 is forced and then the queen moves. In this sense, white has given back the piece but destroyed our pawn structure in front of our king. So it is quite an unclear position after a move like bishop b8, attacking the h2 pawn and threatening d5. d5 immediately wouldn't have won material, because even though both the queen and the knight are hanging, there is a way for white to get out of this, and that is, I hear you saying, queen to f4. The rook is hanging and then the knight can jump away. So instead of d5 immediately, bishop to b8, and it's a mess. It really is a mess. The h2 pawn under attack, d5 is a threat. So our pawn structure is really vulnerable and our king is weaker, but there are tactical elements here, such as d5, that make the position very concrete. This did not happen. This did not happen in the game. Would have been an unclear position, in my opinion. Very complex. Instead of bishop takes e5, white took on a5. And now the bishop is hanging, so it's quite a logical way to continue to play bishop to b6, attack the queen. The queen doesn't have many squares. If it goes back to d5, which would be the central square for the queen, what would you do here? I think think you know the idea already, even without bishop takes e5. We can always include queen h4, that's true. So you guys want to include queen h4 here. Some of you are asking. After queen takes a5, you want to play queen h4. Yes, it's possible. There will be similar positions later on in the game. So you can always include this move. That's very true because it does threaten mating one, and the knight on e4 is hanging. But you'll need to be careful in which position you include it, because for instance here you'll need to calculate moves like bishop takes e5, because that move takes the knight and protects the h2 square. So then you have to calculate what if queen takes e4, then what happens after queen takes a7. There are a lot of lines to consider. I do think that bishop b6 is the best move because it's flexible. It protects the bishop with a tempo so that the queen is hanging, chases the queen away from our knight. Queen a8 happened in the game, by the way. And here queen h4 once again is the question whether to play it immediately or not. But I think oftentimes we are feeling like, oh, I need to play queen h4. It's a brilliant move. It threatens mate in one. And make sure that you choose the right moment and don't just let the excitement take over, because I know it's a very tempting move, but oftentimes the threat is greater than the execution. And here it's pretty much that scenario that as long as you're threatening with it and choose the right moment to play it, it's gonna work out. But there's no need to rush with it, because white constantly has to be thinking about queen h4 constantly. It's always there in the air. So it didn't happen in the game. Bishop b6, and I was asking you, what do we do if the queen goes to d5? c6 is the very same move that we chose in case of bishop takes c5. And now after queen d2, now that the queen has been drawn back to d2 and the knight is unprotected, now we could play queen h4. So choosing the right moment to carry out your attack is one of the key concepts we're going to learn in the course as well, because it's one thing to have the right ideas and the other is timing. Timing is key. Queen h4 here is a winning move in my opinion because of the multiple threats. How can white deal with all these threats at once? Bishop takes e5 doesn't help anymore because we can just take it and the threat is still the same. Mate on h2 and the knight on e4 is hanging. So that move does not help. White could try f3, after which we'll just take on h2. If king f2, I do need you to think again. I was almost showing you the move, but then I thought, nah, you can find it. You can find it. What do you think could be one of the strongest moves here in this position? After queen takes h2, king f2, how to continue the attack. So we already have a very active queen, a really active rook, the knight, the bishop. They're all part of the attack. And there's a way. There's a way to hit immediately because of a tactical element. Let me know if you can see it. There are a couple of great moves here, so there's a good chance that you will find a move that's on the list. But I'd like to know if anyone can figure out the top, the best move in this position. Sack everything, roar. All right, how do you sack everything? Just let me know, because it might be the right idea, but how do you do it? Knight to g4, very good. Many of you have said it in the chat. That's a check. It's gotta be dealt with because the e3 pawn is hanging too, so white has to take it. And we have given up a piece that we immediately take back. This is the best of sacrifices, when you sacrifice in a way that you are not even material down. So we have all of those green pieces. I've colored them in advance. All of those pieces, the heavy pieces and the bishop on b6, extremely active and extremely dangerous in the attack. Our only piece that is a bit sad is this bishop on c8, but it will too happen sometimes that you cannot bring every single piece. There is a chapter in my course that talks about how to maximize the potential of your pieces and how to bring as many pieces into the attack as possible. But there are positions where you just cannot have it all. You cannot have it all. But four pieces versus what is the defense? So four attacking pieces versus how many defenders? How many defenders can you count for white? And I mean useful defenders, like not the A1 rook, excuse me. So how many useful defenders can you count for white? How many are there? Which pieces? Three defenders, Savage? How many? How many can you see? Two and a half. Pretty much. So the bishop on e2 is doing some defensive job because it's protecting the g4 pawn and it could come to f3. The rook on f1, well, it's near the king, but is it doing anything right now? I think the only pieces that are actually doing something around the king at this moment are the pawns, the g2 pawn and the e3 pawn. So yeah, I would agree with the 2.5 in this moment. It can change, of course. I'm hitting my own microphone, by the way. It can change, of course, if white manages to bring the rook somehow to the defense, if the queen would be doing more than just protecting a pawn on e3. So it changes with every single move if white or black can add more pieces to the attack or to the defense. But in this very moment, I would count them as 2.5, and they are very useless. Just pawns and the bishop against all of the black army but the c8 bishop. It's a completely winning position for black for that reason. There are way more attacking forces in quantity and in quality than defenders. So it's curtains. It's curtains. I'm just going to show you an example. Bishop d4 to protect the e3 pawn. So now that becomes a defender too, this bishop, but queen h4 check, king g1. And we don't even need to allow this trade because our bishop can be useful also on the b8 h2 diagonal, threatening bishop h2 and then mate in two moves after bishop h2. This is just a dead loss position. I think rook f2 has to be played to prevent the mate in 3. And now it's an exchange up and the attack continues. Completely a hopeless position. I stopped analyzing after rook h3, I think for understandable reasons. The threat is rook takes f3 because of the pin on the second rank. And white's position completely collapses. It didn't happen in the game, but I do think that many of these sidelines are important to highlight because they are just as instructive as the game. And that's another thing I've done in the course is that it's not only the main moves and what happened exactly in the game, but what are the lines that the players avoided? Because there's a reason why these top players don't go for a certain move. I'm pretty sure that Jorge here with the white pieces saw why queen d5 is not a good move. And we need to understand why are these moves not played in their games, because they know it, but we may have to think a little harder to figure out the reason behind it. So queen d5 was not played, but instead the best move for white is queen a8. And now question to you guys. Is this the moment to play queen h4? As I said, in the attack, it's great to know the right plans. I'm talking about mini plans in the course a lot. You always need to know what's the next right idea, the next right step. And so far we have carried out a rook lift. We have this knight on e5 from the opening, which is great. But the next idea would be to bring the queen into the attack too. So for sure, that's the next right idea. But is this the right moment for bringing the queen into the attack? Let's see. So queen h4. What do you think about queen h4 in this position? Do let me know. Do let me know. Queen h4, what would be the answer of white after queen h4? That's the main thing to consider. Benjamin, you have purchased the course and you have the entire Anna Rudolf collection now. Thank you so much. I'm very happy to have you as such a frequent student of mine and moderator, best moderator on Twitch. But thanks a lot. I hope that this course will increase your attacking skills even further because this is the first time that I'm dedicating an entire course to attacking and the attacking stage of the middle game against the king in same side castling. And that was basically one of the most frequent questions I got. There's a preview now on Chessable about my course, and I just wanted to mention this because you guys must be aware of the Miss Strategy, Miss Tactics series on Chess24. So everyone was like, but you are Miss Strategy, right? And yeah, I am. And that's why I'm teaching how you build up the attack strategically. So in this course, I break down step by step how do you get from a balanced position to the moment when there is a tactical blow to kill the opponent's king. You need to build up that attack strategically and find always the next right plan, the next right idea. And that's why Miss Strategy can teach an attacking course, because without strategy, there's no tactical blow. There is no tactical blow. So, on that note, Queen h4 is, I'm telling you guys, not the best move. Why so? Because white can play bishop takes e5, defending against the mate on h2, and careful, our rook is overloaded. It cannot carry out both the task of capturing on e5 and protecting the bishop on c8. Sad news, I know. Queen takes e4 is still a question, of course. We can take that knight on e4, but after bishop g3, now tell me how many defenders are there, because the position is very different from the other one we talked about. How many defenders are there around the white king? It's the safest king on the planet, almost. All the pawns, all of those four pawns, and the bishops. The bishop on g3 is great, protecting h2, protecting f2, and blocking the g5. Like the entire g5 is blocked by that bishop, and the other bishop can come to f3. There's no way you can touch that white king in the near future. Like, there's no way. No way. So the tables will turn. This is a winning position for white, in my opinion, because without the kingside attack, what has been black doing? The bishop is stuck on c8. Black is lacking space. The control of the center. There's not much to say about black's position without the kingside attack. There really isn't anything positive, except for a very active queen, of course, and this rook is still active on h6, but with such a strong defense on the king side for white, you cannot attack. You cannot go against that. You would need to trade those pieces in order to attack the white king, and that's another chapter in my course about what piece trades you should aim for. What are the piece trades that are beneficial to you and help your pieces to get even more active? So, queen d4, tempting but not the best move. What happened in the game was d6. Ali Reza knows it. He plays d6 because that, first of all, opens up the diagonal of the bishop that was unemployed. You don't want to have unemployed pieces in your game, so you want this bishop to, at some point, do some damage on the king side. Secondly, this pawn is protecting the knight on e5. So when you will play queen h4 and bishop takes e5 comes, you can take back with the pawn and the rook can still be protecting your bishop on c8. Double purpose. If white takes here, obviously we take back with the pawn, threatening queen h4. Life is great. Didn't happen in the game, but white tried to block the diagonal of the b6 bishop by playing c5. If we take on c5 to accept the pawn sacrifice, white would have taken on e5, and after this trade, now our queen is tied down to the defense of the c8 bishop. So this would be, in my opinion, active counterplay for white. After rook to d1, you need to keep the queen on the back rank. It's not really the attacking position we have dreamed of. With the queen on f8, it's very difficult to give mate, isn't it? So instead of taking the pawn, let's not be greedy for once. I'm a fan of free stuff. You guys know it if you follow me on Twitch. I have an emote for free stuff. This is not a free stuff moment. After c5, don't go for the free stuff, but carry out the next right plan. That is queen to h4. Finally, the queen is joining the attack, threatening mate in 1, and the knight on e4 is hanging. Do we care that our bishop is hanging? No, because this is a bigger threat. And That's also highlighted in the course, that before acting passive and defensive, you should consider whether there's a way to create an equally strong or even stronger threat. So, Queen h4, strongest threat on the board, the threat of mate, perfect. Now, if h3, we would simply take on e4, and after c takes b6, I need big brain time from your side. What do we do next? So we have a perfectly placed queen on e4, a very strong knight on e5. The rook on h6 is okay, but after h3, it's not doing much anymore. What's next in this attacking position? What do you think? What shall be the next right move? The next right move here for black. I'll give you a bit of time because I know there's a bit of lag between when I say something and when you guys get to see it. So let me know. I'm going to take a look at both the Chess24 and the Twitch chat. So, any ideas? I see the right move mentioned by a couple of you. Bishop takes h3 is tempting, but careful about your own position and about your own pieces. I just want a reminder that you may also get checkmate. So it's not about our dreams and goals in chess, and it's always about us going forward. You also may get checkmated if you are not careful enough. So bishop takes h3. No, don't. Please don't. Please don't. You always need to pay attention to the options of the opponent, to the threats that your opponent is creating, and to the undefended pieces in your position. Undefended. This, guys, this e8 rook is cut off of our queen because of the knight on e5. So be very careful. You could change in a split of a second a completely winning position into a dead loss position. You need to be always, always alert. Do not be tempted by those sacrifices and not look at the full picture. The full picture says you also have hanging pieces, not just white. So careful about that. The right move here is rook to g6. Bishop d7 is a good idea too. So those of you saying bishop d7, that makes perfect sense too, because it does attack the queen. But the queen on the a8 is pretty clumsy. So something to bear in mind is that, yeah, you may want to attack the queen, but it's possible that there will be a moment where bishop takes h3 or any other discovered attack will be working if you keep the opponent's queen on a8. So that's something to bear in mind, that even though in this very moment you cannot, what if the knight jumped away from e5 and you would be able to carry out this discovered attack? So bishop d7 is a move that you can play later on too if needed, but I would keep it once again as a threat. Just hang it in the air. You don't have to play that move because it's more flexible to keep it for later in case there will be a discovered attack. Rook to g6 is the best move because it does threaten mate in one again. It's very difficult to argue against mate in one. And bishop h3 once there will be no pin. So bishop to d7 first and then bishop h3. And this is pretty much winning. After bishop g4, trying to just cover up on the g file, you can simply play h5 and the bishop cannot move because it's mate on g2. There isn't really a way for white to get out of this. I tried in my analysis g3, but that does not help either, because in this position, big brain time, folks, again, big brain time. In this position, what do we do? What do we do? You know the right ideas already. Let's just put together the pieces of the puzzle. After g3, how do you continue? I wonder who will calculate the right plan. So here, this is already about the final stage of the attack, when it's time to hit, and precise calculation, machine-like calculation is needed. So I want those inner cyborgs of you to be channeled right now in the variations that you suggest. But don't just go for the first thing that you can capture. Like I see rook takes g6, rook takes g3 from g6 to g3. being mentioned, but have you guys calculated it? Like, you cannot just sacrifice a rook and say it's gonna be mate. Now you need to back it up with calculation. So please don't just go all in without backing it up with precise machine-like calculation. Okay, everything is good. That's not really the case, actually. That's not really the case. It's a good position, but you cannot just sit back and not play the most precise moves, because white also has some threats. For instance, taking on c7 to create a pass pawn, coming back to a4 with the queen to try to trade queens and threaten your rook. So this is a critical moment, and you cannot play random moves like h6. This is not a solid position where you have a strategic edge. It is a position where you need to hit. So the momentum is important. We have taken the initiative, but we need to maintain it. And the right move, mentioned by a couple of you, both on Chess24 and on Twitch, is indeed knight f3 check. We've mentioned this, and now you put the pieces together that once the knight goes away, the queen is protecting the rook on e8. So after bishop takes f3, you could think whether there's a way to get this discovered attack in, but our queen is hanging too, so let's not do it right now. But queen takes f3. We have gotten rid of the light squared bishop of the opponent, and in a fianchetto structure, that bishop is so crucial. There are so many squares now that are weak because of the lack of the bishop, and this is what the chapter about the piece activity and maximizing your pieces, the potential of your pieces, is in my course. What pieces, how do you activate your pieces, but also what pieces to trade, because by getting rid of the light square bishop of white, you are now the king of the light squares. Look at those holes on light squares. It's a cheese. Here, 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 here. It's just terrible. And now you can consider moves like this because there will be a follow-up to it. So, for instance, b takes c7. Let's make a move for white too that seems active. And now it's time to go for that rook takes g3 that you guys called for earlier. Because after f takes, queen takes, king h1, queen takes h3, check. And after king g1, rook takes e3. The queen from h3 is looking at the c8 bishop. We are not blundering it away. And it's going to be mate with queen g4, rook h3. Doesn't matter what white does. There's no way. White is currently a rook up and has a pass pawn on c7, but how many defenders are there around the white king against how many attackers? Let's do a count again. How many attackers do we have? Because we have sacrificed a lot. We have traded the knight and we have sacrificed the rook, so we don't have much left. But as long as it's more than what the opponent has as defense, you're fine. It's 2 versus 1 or none, basically. So this is 2 extremely powerful attacking pieces versus a bare king. There are no pawns. There are no bodyguards. I call those pawns in the king side or queen side, but it doesn't matter which side. Where your king is, after castling, the pawns in front of your king are your bodyguards. In this position, the king has 0 bodyguards. None. And the rook on f1 is not doing anything. So yeah, it's next to the king, but it's more like a symbolic defense. It doesn't do anything about the attack. So 2 versus 0. I think it's a 2 versus 0 situation. The queen, the white queen, is as far from saving the white king as possible. Like, how will that queen from a8 end up protecting these squares? How can it come here from a8 to cover all of those squares? Like, impossible. Impossible. We could try a few moves if rook a e1, for instance, because white also has some ideas. We just need to make sure everything comes with a check, because our king can be mated too. Remember that our king can also be mated. So queen g4 check, and next move it's mate with king f2, queen g3. And if the king comes to the h file, then rook h3. Just make sure that you calculate precisely and don't get back rank mated, all right? Don't get back rank mated. There's no other defense. You can try any move here. It just doesn't work. It's 2 versus 0. 2 versus 0. Terrible position for white. 4 pieces on the board that are not doing anything. 4 pieces. And they look natural. Like the rooks are where they normally are. The bishop is developed. This queen is pinning the bishop up. not helping the king, not where it should be, not helping. So this would have been just one of the many pretty lines that can occur in this line if white had played h3. So once again, we were looking at this position. Don't play bishop takes h3, please. If you just remember one thing from this lesson, then let's make it this one. That the opponent is also playing on the board and they also may have threats and ideas. So be alert. Please don't blow your position up by not realizing that you can also lose. So it's not a one sided game. Even if you have the initiative, even if you are the one in control, there's always a last trick, a last thread that your opponent will go for. You have to be alert all the time, like all the time. All right. This is an undefended piece. And you gotta bear that in mind. Undefended pieces lose pieces in the opponent's camp and on your own camp. So loose pieces and your king's position are extremely important for tactical motives. I talk about that in my master method and also in this attacking course. Bear them in mind. Bear them in mind. Okay, I think it has gotten through. I see many of you confirming it in the chat that if anything, we've learned this today. Awesome. Let's see what Jorge played in this position. Took on e5 because that does protect against the mate, and usually the defender will try to trade as many pieces as possible. It's very logical because if you think of it, the closer the game it is to an end game, the more likely that they will survive the attack. Very important that you try to keep your attacking pieces on the board, but there will be times like this when you just cannot prevent bishop takes e5. Like you cannot run away with all your pieces just so that you don't trade. There will be trades. You just need to make sure that those trades also benefit you. So d takes e5. Remember, just remember. We would love to have another rook coming into the game, but it's not the moment. Not the moment. f3 here. Once again, other moves don't really make sense because we are still threatening mate and still threatening the knight. So there isn't really a way for white to deal with those threats at once. I'd like to show you here h3 and compare this line to what we have seen earlier. If we play queen takes e4, c takes b6, let's say rook g6, just like in the previous line, it's almost the same, isn't it? Why are we even looking at this? It's almost the same. Threatening mate. This maybe when this will not be hanging, careful about that. g4, and it looks great. Like bishop takes g4, we are winning. No, we are not. The same thing. I was trying to trick you, but no. It's not working, guys. It will never work as long as this is hanging. If we do include bishop to d7, then yeah, then you can make it work. That's sacrifice on g4. But without that, forget about it. And therefore, I do believe that the best thing to do here is after h3, now bishop d7, see where the queen goes, and then you can either go for, well, you cannot take here anymore, but what you can do is that you will take on e4 with the bishop. So this is another key difference. When do you include bishop d7 in the game? You can include it after you take on e4, or you can include it here and take on e4 with the bishop. So now you have also included the bishop in the attack. The queen, the rook, the bishop are all actively taking part of the attack. And if c takes b6, like white is a piece down, has to take back the piece. Now bishop takes g2 is crushing. It's mate into if white takes on g2, and if white does not take on g2, it's also gonna be mate, because this is coming regardless. Mate in a couple of moves. Mate. So these are just exemplary lines on how dangerous the position is after queen h4, and if white plays a move like h3. After bishop takes e5, d takes e5, h3 is what we have just looked at, and we compared the two h3 positions. But very similar ideas are possible in both positions. What was the difference is the timing. When do you take on e4? When do you first play bishop d7? And that is something that you will always need to consider in your own games too. You need to have, first of all, the right idea. I call them mini plans. And as I said earlier, with started with the rook lift. That was the first mini plan. Then the next mini plan was to make sure that the rook will not be depending on this rook takes e5 capture. Remember when white took on e5? That was the next goal. Then we had the next mini plan of getting the queen into the attack. So those were all mini plans that we established what's the next right plan, and then you find a way to execute it. But the execution has to be well timed. So always make sure that first you find the right idea, the next mini plan, and second you execute it in the right way. And that's why it's important that you do consider not just always the very same main move, which could be all right here too, but sometimes other moves will be stronger, such as bishop d7, bishop c6. So that's just the comparison between details in these lines that we have looked at. The game continued with f3, and after queen takes h2, king f2. Here, I think what Fallujah played is strong, rook g6, but perhaps it was even stronger to give this check first and then go for the move that you guys have been saying again, bishop d7, to attack the queen, then play bishop c6, another tempo. Every time you play a move with a tempo, it keeps maintaining the initiative. And the initiative in the attack, that's the first chapter in the course. It's so crucial that you keep maintaining the initiative. So bishop d7, bishop c6, and now you can take on c5, because after knight takes c5, queen h2, this is gonna be mate in a few moves. After rook takes g2, it's a crushing position. We are a piece down, so we have sacrificed the piece for this position, but I think everyone can see that these two heavy pieces on the second rank, and the only defense that white has is this queen and the bishop on e2, which is already iffy. It's depending on the queen. It is a crushing position. We could spend more time on this, but I'm afraid then we will not get through the entire game. So if you want to analyze this position further, feel free to screen capture it or come back to the VOD and pause this moment, analyze it further if you want to. But I'm going to leave it on the note that Black's attack is crushing. We will focus on other lines more because this didn't happen in the game, and I want you to mainly see how Fallujah carried out the attack after rook to g6. Rook to g6, the threat is very similar. Once again, g2 pawn is hanging, queen h4 can still be played. So white goes rook to g1, and now bishop d7. Once again, the move that you guys have suggested a couple of times. The queen has to go. Well, queen takes b7, we already know what happens. Bishop c6, another tempo, attacking the knight on e4. Not really cool for white. So queen to a3. And now, what do you think is the next right move? We have a very powerful queen in the attack. We have a really strong rook. Our bishop is hanging. So one way to think about it would be, can we save the bishop? And then you look at the possibilities. Bishop a5 is hanging. Bishop a7 is hanging. Bishop takes c5 is hanging. So let's give up on the bishop. It's lost. The bishop is lost. So when you realize that your piece is gonna be captured no matter what, then let's move on and find something stronger. What can be a stronger threat here than the loss of our bishop? What do you think Fallujah played in this moment? I see the solution already on Twitch. Let me check on the Chess24 chat as well. So, yes, very good. Very good job, guys. Bishop to h3. Not caring about this bishop because it's lost, so we create a stronger threat, which is the capture on g2. Whether with the rook or with the bishop will depend on the calculation. So once again, bishop h3 is the next right idea, and then we'll need to see whether you take on g2 with the rook or with the bishop. The bishop was not captured just yet because it's trapped, so white decides to protect the g2 pawn. It's very logical because, as you can see, our bishop is not going anywhere. So white is not in a hurry, prefers defense, and it's your turn again. Big brain time. This is well protected now. We cannot take on g2. We don't have a check either. and our bishop is lost. So is black lost here, or can we put more wood on the fire? We need to create more attack. We need to increase the pressure on white. How can you increase the pressure in the attack when you already have an active queen, a very strong bishop and rook? This rook would love to join the attack but doesn't really have a way at the moment. And our back rank, careful about your own position too, our back rank is vulnerable. So in a dream scenario, this rook would be somewhere useful, but that's a dream. It's not there, all right? Forget about it. If we cannot bring the rook, what other piece could join the attack? I see the solution already in the chat. You guys are brilliant, doing an amazing job there, doing an amazing job. F5. This little soldier is about to change the outcome of the game, because without this move, black's attack is pretty much stuck. There's no way you can increase the pressure without throwing in this move. And this move is once again a multi-purpose move. We are pushing this pawn so that later we may be able to open up the position with f4 or e4. But first of all, it is chasing away a very strong defender, because it's about increasing the power of our pieces, bringing more and more pieces into the attack, but it's also about eliminating the defense of the opponent, whether it's by sacrifices or most of the time it's by trading or chasing away those pieces. So when you see puzzle books, it's always about the final blow, and that often involves sacrifices. But before you get to the stage where you can sacrifice pieces for checkmate, you need to build up the attack. And building up the attack often means that you need to chase away the opponent's best defenders or trade them. So we are chasing away this crucial knight because that's the one that's keeping an eye on the g3 square. Very, very important. Removing a defender to create the and creating the option of opening lines. Very well summed up, Cavalier. That's indeed what we are doing here. So f5 happened in the game, and white played queen a4. Once again, make sure you always just take a look at what's going on from the opponent's perspective. Hello, they also have a threat. Queen a4 attacks the rook, threatens mate in 1. What do you think we should do here? Because for one moment, in this very moment, Fallujah made a mistake. And that's one of the reasons why I ended up not choosing the game, even though I still think it's a brilliant attacking game. But here, Fallujah did not play the best move. So until now, this game analysis and this lesson has been about, can you play like Fallujah and attack like a machine? But right now, the task is, can you play better than Fallujah? No kidding. He's, of course, one of the brightest talents in the chess world, but he can also make mistakes. And he made a mistake in this very moment. Can you find what would be the right move for black? And don't find Fallujah's move, because that wasn't the best. Can you find the best move for black here? The rook is hanging, so it's got to do something with the rook. It's got to do something with that hanging piece. I wonder who can find the move that would have been the right move, and how many of you would call Fallujah's move? I wonder. Let me see. I'm going to take a look at the chat. Oh, my Twitch chat has just refreshed, so it somehow made all of my... Wait a second. It somehow made all of my... I don't know how I closed my Twitch chat, but I'm going to come back and see the chat as soon as I can. I'm going to come back and see the chat. Connecting to chat. Okay. I'm back. I somehow closed my chat, but I'm back, guys. I'm back. I'm still here on Chess24, though I didn't manage to close both chats at the same time. So, the move is... I've seen both the good move and Fallujah's move mentioned in the chat. Interesting. Let me tell you which one is which. It's not an easy position, I must say. So it's normal to make mistakes. The most natural looking move is Rook d8. And that's the one that Fallujah played. It's not the best move. It looks great, right? It's an open file. We may be able to play Rook d2 once the knight jumps away. Like, why not Rook d8? Corey immediately spotted why not. The right move for white, and now I need you to find the right move before we analyze what would have been the better move for black earlier. So after rook d8, I need you to go big brain time for white. What's the strongest move here? What is wrong with rook d8? Because there's a flaw with this idea and with this move. What's the problem? Let me know in the chat if you can see it. Many of you have said it both on Chess24 and I see it also on Twitch. Brilliant job, guys. Brilliant job. Rook to d1. Double exclamation mark. This is a free piece, but it cannot be taken because of queen e8. Checkmate. Once again, remember, the opponent also wants to play the strongest moves and they also want to give you checkmate. So rook d8, rook d1, this happened in the game. This happened in the game. The tables turned. Suddenly white takes the initiative and it's white who is attacking. This game is extremely exciting. But before we continue, I'm going to leave it as a next up on episode 2 between Fallujah and Corey. No, we're going to check it in this lesson. But before we continue with the game, let me show you what would have been the right move here. I also saw in the chat rook f8, which is better than the game move. So kudos to you if you would have chosen rook to f8. It's stronger. It's stronger than rook to d8. Still not the best though. There's a tricky move here for white that is knight to g5. That knight is hanging, but if it's taken, the queen now suddenly can swing to the king side, attack the rook, and attack the bishop on h3. That bishop was untouchable earlier because of the pin on the second rank, but if you can take it with the queen, that's a different story. And also, a move like this, rook g4, super tricky. This position is crazy complex. If white takes this, then black is alright after f takes g4 check, king e2, and bishop takes c5. Black is an exchange down, but let's just look at what's on the board. Active bishop, queen super active, attacking the rook, pinning the pawn. This bishop, it's either very good or very bad because it cannot move one or the other, but this rook for sure is really strong and active. White's pieces, the g1 rook is trapped. The f1 bishop cannot move, and this rook is not doing anything. So out of the 4 pieces that white has, 3 of them are not doing anything, and the king is dancing in the middle of the board. So this is not a cool position for white. Black is winning. So if you want to analyze this position further, again, you can always replay the VOD. Just set up the position in your own chess software, play it out on a physical chessboard. I'm telling you, there are so many details to learn from in this position and in the previous ones. This game is full of insightful, delicate details, but we don't have the time to pay attention to all of them. So I just want to point out that after rook g4, you don't have to take the rook. You don't have to take the rook. You can give a check first because that bishop was stuck in every single position. Let's not leave it stuck. You give a check first, and then you take the rook. And now, one move later, the same variation is such a different picture. Compare it to what we saw earlier. Compare this position. Let me show you one more time because it's so important to understand. So this position, if we don't give the check, look at this position. Just remember this position for a moment. Remember how it looks. And compare this line to bishop c4 check and then taking the rook. You see the difference? This bishop is active. This rook is protected. It's connected. The other rook can move too. Rook f1, and once again, it's white who is attacking. White is an exchange up and has the initiative and the attack. So suddenly this is once again a winning position for white. Crazy, isn't it? These lines are amazingly cool in my opinion because it's so much about precision and finding the momentum. Rook g4 looks like a strong move, but bishop c4 just changes the story. Many very important details here, but we will not get to the end of the game if I pay attention to every single one of them. Once again, feel free to analyze it on your own because It's a beautiful game. You can find the game in the database, you can analyze those lines yourself. But now we're going to look at what would have happened if black played the right move. So this was rook f8, knight g5, and this position I think should be winning for white. Like this is an exchange up, and any other move that I analyze is not doing the job either. So I think white is great here. But what could have been better for black is I need to laugh at this move because it looks just so bad. It looks like the worst. It rook d8 looks natural. Rook f8 seems like it's solid, right? What is the king doing on f8? Like why? Process of elimination. Rook d8 is bad. Rook f8 is bad. Then what's left? You gotta protect the rook. It's not a logical move, but it's the one that's left. I also wanted to make a course separately on defensive resources and finding the right defense because I do think that there are moments like this, for instance, in this game where it's absolutely not natural what's the best move. C6 is also an option. Yes, I agree that that's an option too. But according to what I analyzed, King f8 is the strongest. You can take a look at c6 once again. Feel free to analyze further the position. But King f8 seems to be the strongest. And after c takes b6, f takes e4, queen takes e4, queen g3 check. This is an example line. Rook takes b6. In this position, it's equal material, but once again, what we see on the board is a bishop that's stuck on f1, a rook that is pretty much trapped on g1, not connected to the other rook. So this is a great position for black. It looks like white has threats also. Queen takes h7, wins a pawn, and threatens with some checks against our king. But once the queen leaves the e4 square, we can push our pawn because it is the white king that is in the middle of the board. We need to open up the position to gain access to that king. So e4 is, I think, a very strong move here. If checks, we can just simply hide the king. Rook g6 or g6, both are good in this position. We are threatening to take here. So if rook c1 to threaten rook takes c, well, not threatening immediately, but just to try to bring this rook in general. And we can still play c6 to free the queen. And then this is, once again, just a sample line. May not be always the only move for either side, but a position like this would be, once again, decisive advantage for black. And the reason for it, I colored them already. All the black pieces are extremely active and are all taking part of the attack, including this brave soldier on e4. That brave soldier is about to open up the position for black's pieces and gain access to the king. While the pieces of white, the f1 bishop is the saddest piece on the board, but it also makes sad the g1 rook. It's a disaster, this position, a complete disaster. Once again, feel free to analyze these positions further and feel free to look at c6 in more detail because that's a move that I didn't analyze in detail when I saw that King f8 is also the best according to the engine, but feel free to analyze it really. I think anything but rook d8 maybe. Unfortunately for Fallujah, he stepped into it. Rook d1 is very strong here, and now he had to go rook f8. But guess what? We have seen this already. We have seen this. Can someone tell me quickly? What's the best move here for white? We have seen this. We have seen this already. The best move here for white is can someone tell me? And I've just realized I'm not even sitting in the middle, but apologies. I'm going to try to center myself, not move too far away from a microphone. But what's the best move here? Brilliant! Brilliant! Knight to g5, indeed. We've seen this in the other rook f8 line, and now the rook is on d1, so it can only be better. It's only getting better for white. White is winning. Suddenly, from a crushing attack for Fallujah, it's Corey who now takes the initiative, but he didn't play knight g5. See, you found a better move than Fallujah, and now you've just found a better move than Corey. I'm telling you, they also make mistakes. sometimes. Knight g5 is a brilliant move if it's taken. Same idea. Queen h4. If rook g4, you know this already. You know this already. Yes, indeed. It's the same idea. Bishop c4 check. And only then we take the rook, because now the bishop does not get stuck on f1 after the check. F takes g4. Winning position for white. Very good job, guys. Very good job. Bishop d3 threatening mate on h7, for instance. And then bishop e4. Now we are protecting the pawn with the bishop. So this is a multifunctional move again. It's still a very active piece in our attack. We can later attack on the light squares to threaten mate on h7. But protecting g2 means that now we are about to play rook h1 to trap the queen, because where is that queen going, ladies and gentlemen? Where is that queen going? And also then it means that we can take the bishop even if the queen escapes, because that bishop is stuck too. This position is completely lost for black. Completely lost. I love this game because it has so much in it for both sides. Tables are turning. Tables are turning, but Corey did not play knight g5. He did not play knight g5. He played first queen to c4 check. And the difference, it's huge, the difference, because after that queen check, if now we play knight g5, rook takes g5, let's compare. Let's compare these two lines. First of all, if we play this now, everything that we have seen before with rook g4, we cannot play bishop c4 check anymore. It's not working. We have already given that check with the queen. Ayrton, I will show you what the actual game is, but my point is not that you remember what the actual game is. My point is that you understand the details in every single line that we go through, whether it's a sideline or the main game. So this is not about remembering what this game is move by move. I don't really mind if you don't remember. What I do want you to remember are the patterns that we are learning from these attacking positions, and how one small mistake can change the entire picture of the game, and what all these details mean for this attacking position. So really, don't worry about not knowing where the main move is or not. You can always find the game in the database and play through it. What I want you to learn are the details that we are going through, the concepts, the mini plans, the ideas, the patterns. That's what I care about. No, no worries. I know you didn't mean to interrupt. I do like to address the questions in the chat, so don't feel like it's any ways of interrupting, but I don't mind that you don't know where we are, because I don't know where we are at this point. There's so many complex lines in this game. But here you definitely see everything we analyzed earlier with the bishop c4 check and then taking the rook is not possible if we have already given a check. It is not possible. So attacking like a machine does involve precise calculation, and giving a check on c4 by Corey was a mistake. Even though they are both very strong grandmasters, Corey over 2600 and Fallujah does not need introduction, 16 years old, over 2700. Corey played queen f7, which looks crazy scary, like crazy scary. Aren't we getting mated? What do we do? What do we do? That's why he gave the check. So knight g5 obviously didn't work. He gave the check because of this move. What's going on here? Can someone tell me what's going on? I'm gonna wait for your answer. I'm gonna wait for your answer. I told you I'm gonna make you work. We are not here to just passively watch. We are here to learn. What do we do? What do we do as black? Like, we better not get mated. We better not get mated. Rook to g8. As passive as it looks, it's the best move. You can try other moves. Once again, feel free to analyze this game further in your spare time. But rook to g8 is the best by test. Fallujah played it and it worked out in the game. I do think that black is winning again. Like, this game is crazy. The tables are turning constantly. That's why I did not include it in the course in the end. The course shows you games that carry out the step-by-step mini plans that build up the attack and then execute the attack until the opponent resigns. So in the course, the games are not changing the evaluation this much because I thought it's more instructive for the purpose of the course. When you build up the initiative from a balanced position, you take the initiative, you maintain it, you keep increasing your pressure, you keep bringing more pieces, you keep weakening the opponent's camp, you keep chasing their defenders away, trade their defending pieces, sacrifice in the end if needed for the final blow. But all the games in the course show the progress from how you build it up until the very end when there's a winning final blow, a tactical motive, oftentimes. In this game, I thought there's so much to learn from this game, but it's changing so much too that I ended up not including it in the course. At the same time, I love the game because I think it's brilliant. I think it's a brilliant game. But after Rook G8, as funky as it looks that our king is on H8 and Rook on G8, now, finally, the black king is safe. Very safe. Could barely be safer. Luckily, this rook cannot come to e8. That would not make our king safe, but the rook would only make it to d8, and that's fine. We can take the rook on d8. It would be resigns for us if the rook could make it to e8. Not the case here, and the knight is still hanging, so very important that we are chasing that knight away. Remember, that was why we played f5 in the first place. So now the knight moves away, knight to g5, and once again, it is black to move. What do you think Fallujah played in this position after knight to g5? It's gonna be such a surprising move. I'm telling you, you're gonna be extremely surprised. He took the knight. Very surprising. We wanted to eliminate that defender, chase it away or eliminate it, trade it, get rid of it. Get rid of it so that we have access to this g3 square. And that's what we are doing, taking it simply. C takes b6 to take the bishop and at least equalize the material. And I do like the fact that Fallujah, instead of going for something very concrete against the white king, first took the time to take the pawn on b6. And that's another concept I highlight in my course, is that even if there are positions where the engine may suggest that queen g3 and then taking on g2 or e4 or f4, something concrete may be working. I haven't even checked it in this position because I don't care. I want you to always be more pragmatic in your attack, unless it's absolutely necessary that you go for a crazy line. Don't do it. Like, why the extra heart attack to allow white to ever take on c7 and have a pawn that's about to promote? Like, if you play anything else, like let's say queen g3 and then e4 or queen g3 and then f4, just maybe just this position as a demonstration. Like, maybe it's winning. It may be winning, but do you really want to calculate whether you are giving mate? And if you don't give mate, then white is winning because because this pass pawn is crazy strong, and white is threatening rook d8, and white is threatening queen takes g8, and after queen takes g8, it's c8 queen. It's just not needed. Don't give counter chances to your opponent unless you have to. There's absolutely no need to hurry this much that you don't play prophylactic moves like c takes b6. So I think Fallujah played here the most pragmatic and therefore, in my opinion, the strongest move. It's very practical to get rid of this pawn because that's the last chance of white. It's the last hope of white to have a passed pawn that can create tactical motives for white. So don't give it to your opponent. You can give mate 2 moves later. It's not a race about who gives mate earlier, like if the game is 34 moves or 38 moves, that doesn't really matter, does it? So don't worry about that. It's better to be pragmatic and eliminate any possible counterplay before you go for the final blow in this position. Because there's absolutely no hurry since this king is already quite exposed. The rook is still terrible on g1 and the bishop is stuck on f1. So there's just no way that white can get out of this. Absolutely no way. Now, after c takes b6, what happened in the game? Let me click back on the game because I have gone through the earlier moves. C takes b6, queen c7 happened, and Fallujah simply played, once again, a very patient move. Instead of going for concrete lines, which are tempting and maybe winning, it's tempting, but no hurry. He played h6, because oftentimes what we had wrong in our lines was the back rank for black. So this is yet another prophylactic move. C takes b6 was prophylaxis, and h6 is another prophylactic move. And this is just as much part of the attack as the very active going forward moves, because remember, it's a game of two. Your opponent has ideas too. You definitely don't want to miss a tactical motive that will, in the end, carry out a back rank mate. So it's very important that you take into account the opponent's possibilities too, and you make sure that you will not miss any final trick. In a desperate position too, it can happen there. If your opponent has a desperately lost position, but there can be a final trick. So I think h6 is the best, once again, for how pragmatic it is, how practical. And after rook d8, now Fallujah went for queen g3 check, king e2. Look at these beautiful pieces. Bishop on f1, rook on g1, king on e2. Funny enough, if you lift up these three pieces and place them back on those very same squares in different order, they could almost be fine. I mean, not with the bishop on h3 and queen on g3 and rook on g5. It still looks pretty bad. But just imagine that if the black pieces weren't this active on the king side, it would be an almost normal king side to have the king on g1, rook on f1, and bishop on e2. Here it would still be lost. But what I'm saying is that it's not even the standard setup. It's all messed up. It's like as if white has never castled. What is the king doing on e2? What is it doing on e2, honestly? And why the bishop has never been developed from f1? I think if we show this position to someone who hasn't seen it from the opening stage, they would think for sure that white did not castle in this game, and white has never touched the f1 bishop. You know well that it's not the case. Remember the position where we started from. Remember, we're coming from here. White had a healthy king side, a healthy structure with the bodyguards in front of the king, a bishop on e2, everything great, centralized pieces, very active position, space advantage. Everything was fine for white, and it collapsed step by step as Fallujah kept putting more and more pressure on white. It may not have been the best way of playing. I do think that, especially not after knight e4, but here, if white had played c5, I do think white should be somewhat better. Not much. So I think that this position really is dangerous for white, and white has to be precise. But what happened in the game after knight e4, rook h6, and queen takes a5, white won that pawn, but the rest of the position just collapsed very quickly. It collapsed so quickly. And this is where we are now. Couple of moves later, we are in this position where rook d8 was a mistake. You know that rook d8 was a mistake. So here, here for a couple of moves, white is winning again, and you know the winning move, right? With knight to g5 and then this queen h4. You know all that, but the final move here after h6, queen g3 check, rook takes d8, and king h7. This is where white resigned. Why did he resign? Why did he resign? Because it's a complete disaster. It's a complete disaster, this position. And once again, it does look like Tien Khan. It does look like white played the bomb cloud. It looks like a beginner's game with the king position. Absolutely. It's crazy, isn't it? Feel free to look up this game in the database. It was played just a year ago in Hogevens, Fallujah against Corey. In the Netherlands, they played a match against each other. And I do include another game from the match, uh, also won by Fallujah. I thought that this was a brilliant game, but a bit too crazy for what I wanted to present in the chapter where I was going to include it. Still, I do think that there are a lot of details to learn from this game, and I hope that you have enjoyed this lesson. Let me know if you have any final questions about any of the earlier positions, or if you have any questions about the course. That cyborg that's staring at you, attack like a machine, is what we give it as a secondary title, but the first and main title of my brand new chessable course, and first ever chessable course, to be fair, is called Anna's Anatomy of the Attack, and it's about attacking chess middle game positions where you need to first of all build up the attack from a balanced position, how you take the initiative, how you maintain it, how you keep increasing the pressure. Many of these steps that we have covered today, not as much as in the course, obviously. The course is way more detailed. It has over 100 exercises, over 5 hours of video instructions, and over 47,000 words, which I'm telling you, I've never ever written those many words in my life. And I spent quite a lot of years at university and writing essays. I have never written a book myself, and this is the first time that I do have the ebook. The Move Trainer includes the full annotations of all the games that I analyze in the course, and loads of exercises that break down step by step how to build up an attack successfully. So this has been a sample of a game that, once again, I do think it's very, very much on the extreme of craziness and how complex it is, but I still think it's a brilliant game. I still think that even though both players made mistakes, it truly shows that they are both really talented players. And Corey immediately grabbed the initiative when Fallujah played that move, Rook d8, which was a mistake. Remember this moment? The tables turned suddenly because Rook d8 was a mistake, and Corey spotted immediately the mistake, but then gave back the favor with Queen c4 check. So missed opportunities by both players, but in the end, Fallujah won in a brilliant style. And I hope that you have learned from this game, and I hope you will also check out the rest of the course. So at chessable.com/Anna, you can figure out what is the chapter by chapter breakdown of my course and what can you learn from it exactly. There's now a preview video on the course page. So once again, it's chessable.com/Anna. And in the preview, I do show a sneak peek into what's exactly in the course. Many of you have requested this. It shows you the exercise breakdowns, the model games, and a lot of information so that you can decide whether it's a course that you need. I do think that my recommendation is, yes, it's not for beginners, but any level above beginner. So intermediate, advanced, and expert level, that's the target audience for my course. And I also think that it will be useful for you if you feel like you do love attacking, but oftentimes you don't know how to carry out an attack, because in puzzle books, it's always the final stage of the attack that you get to practice. And I think it's very important to hone your tactical vision by solving tactics, but you need to also learn how do you strategically build up the position until there's a final blow. So the course focuses on deconstructing step by step how to build up a successful attack. It's a strategy course that will end in tactics because of a successfully built, strategically sound attacking plan. Mini plans, as I call them, that will help you get to the final plan, the final kill of the opponent's king. So I hope that you enjoy this short lesson, short and sweet. Well, we've been here for an hour and a half, so it's not as short, but I hope it was sweet and educational at the same time. Once again, you will find more information at chessable.com/Anna. And I'll be here on Twitch, mainly on my own channel. I have a channel at Anna_chess where I stream everything, not just chess, but also other games. So do hang out if you want to. And on that note, I think I will be saying goodbye, because now Pascal will be coming on with his show and analyze today's games of the Magnus Invitational. I hope to see you sometime here on Twitch, on Chess24, on Chessable, wherever you find me. It's been a pleasure to carry out this interactive lesson today in your company. Have an amazing day and see you very shortly. Bye.